The Sun Devils team up with the Wildcats to make Arizona now Big 12 territory. Welcome to the Voice of College Football as we match up Arizona State against the Big 12. Of course, the landmark decisions by the Pac-12 corner schools to move, as expected, to the Big 12. That includes Arizona State. How will they fare in the new conference? Let's check out the results against Arizona State and the current Big 12 teams. Arizona State's been a highly successful football program in the past under the likes of Frank Kush back in the 1970s during their transition to the Pac-12 or the Pac-8, the Pac-10 at the time. They became the Pac-10, of course, with the addition of Arizona State and Arizona. Darryl Rogers had a nice run in the 1980s. Later, it was Bruce Snyder who took this program to the brink of a national championship, one drive away against Ohio State in the 1997 Rose Bowl. And most notably, and most recently, I should say, would be Todd Graham taking this program to multiple bowls and a Pac-12 championship game. Arizona State against the Big 12, though, it's been a rough ride for the Sun Devils in recent years. Let's look at the results since the year 2000. 2022 matchup against Oklahoma State, and Arizona State, of course, had an awful season this past year at 3-9. They lost to Oklahoma State, a team that eventually finished at 7-6, 34-17, and the two teams get back together this year. In 2021, it was a loss against BYU, and of course, BYU, a new member of the Big 12. And that was a 27-17 football game. Another loss in 2017 is they had a home-and-home series with Texas Tech. You can see two big shootouts. 68-55 was the win at home against Texas Tech. And then they lost the return trip 52-45 against two Texas Tech teams that finished sub-500. Against West Virginia, that was a loss in the Cactus Bowl, 43-42. Remember that bowl game in 2015. Texas Tech was an opponent again in the Holiday Bowl in 2013. 37-23 is an upset loser to Texas Tech, a really good Arizona State team that season. Then you've got to go all the way back to 2002 and a Holiday Bowl matchup against Bill Snyder and Kansas State, a Wildcats team that finished 11-2, 34-27. So all told, Arizona State 1-6 against the Big 12, 0-3 in bowl games, and 0-2 against ranked teams. In all 7 of these ball games, add them up, and the point differential is negative 43. So not really a large enough of a sample size to draw any conclusions. Now, these Arizona State teams that have faced the Big 12 in these 7 matchups, those Sun Devil teams are 47-44. The Big 12 teams are much better at 55-35. And then if we look at Arizona State football and how it's performed since the year 2000, it's been fairly marginal. And again, recent years, it's been rough for the Sun Devils, of course, and the Kenny Dillingham era is starting here in 2023. 4 top 25 finishes since the year 2000. This was a much better football program in the 80s and 90s with the aforementioned head coaches in control. 151 and 130 since the year 2000. 6 games under 500 in the Pac-12. The variation of success and failure at Arizona State in football through the years has been varied all over the place, up and down. We have tracked it since the mid-70s, and again, I have mentioned the coaches who have succeeded at Arizona State to a championship level in the Pac-12. However, there have been a lot of rough times for this football program as well, and certainly recently under Herm Edwards. Okay. At the same time, consider the population migration to the West. Arizona has a lot more good football talent than it did years ago, and you can see it in the recruiting rankings. So there is talent in Arizona. Arizona State, if they're committed to football, they can win. Could they win in the SEC or the Big Ten? Probably not. But in the Big 12, yes, because there are no elite programs left in the Big 12 after Oklahoma and Texas leave. Arizona State could, if committed to football, win in the Big 12. Again, we are not promoting Arizona State to the Big 12. We're just talking about how that team, that school, that program is matched up against that conference since the year 2000 and how they project going forward. And again, we have lined this up for other schools and other conferences and been more exact about, let's say, Oregon looks like Penn State in the Big Ten and would probably play to that level over the course of time. But for Arizona State, they're a huge wild card, and their history has proven it. Check out the other videos that we've posted concerning Arizona, Utah, and Colorado versus Big 12 competition in recent years. And of course, with these 4 schools coming in from the Pac-12, there is much history between all four, having played in the same division going back to 2011. So how has Arizona State not just fared against the teams that they will now see as Big 12 competition, but their former rivals that are now still their current rivals, moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12? Arizona State against rival Arizona. As you might expect, Arizona's been down, so the Sun Devils own this series since 2011, 8-4. They did lose in 2022, but they've outscored the Wildcats by 133 points. That's 11 points per contest. It might surprise some. It does me, without really thinking about it, once I added up 6-5 against Utah. Of course, Utah's been much better recently, but Arizona State, the better team after Utah joined the Pac-12, having outscored Utah by 11 points in those 11 games. And then against Colorado, well, the Buffs have been awful, the worst program in the Pac-12 since joining, and the Sun Devils there, 8-3, having outscored the Buffs by 155 points. Added all together, Arizona State, like Utah, 22-12. They've outscored those three teams that come with them to the Big 12 from the Pac-12 by 299 points. That's the strong showing by Arizona State, a school that, of course, was in the, what you could say, group of five, even though that term did not exist way back in the 60s and 70s, but moved to the Pac Conference to make it the Pac-12 along with Arizona in 1978. Sun Devils, how will they compete in the Big 12? Well, we've seen throughout their history that when they're right, when they're recruiting at home and when they're doing the right things and have great leadership like a Dennis Erickson or Darryl Rogers or somebody of that ilk, and of course, Bruce Snyder going to the Rose Bowl and coming that close to a national championship in 1996, Arizona State can be much more than respectable. Now taking on a very deep conference, they've had a better history than their rivals Arizona, so you would think historically they would have a better shot of competing near the top of the Big 12, but they've got to be much better than they've been in recent years. And even going back about 10 years, they've been a marginal bowl team at best against under Todd Graham and then Herm Edwards. They did go to the Pac-12 championship game in 2014. Your thoughts about Arizona State competing in the Big 12? We've sized it up for you. The recent past, how they've competed against the teams that they're coming to the Big 12 with, and your thoughts down below. Right here at the Voice of College Football, best discussion, debate, and analysis.